And welcome back to the Anglo-Italian Pod Euro 2024 previews. And this time, last but not least, this is the final one of our preview episodes. We have friend of the show, Charles Davie, to talk all things Scotland. Man, how are we doing?
Yeah, really good. Really excited for the tournament ahead. It's so nice to be the first game up. I'm looking forward to the upset on Friday when Scotland come away with some points. Yeah, how are you doing?
I am all good. I'm getting super excited. It feels like in Italy, people are starting to get a little bit switched onto it now. You can see the bars and the flags kind of coming out. So it feels like Euro fever is finally hitting, which is good. I'm not sure how optimistic the Italians are, but they're cautiously optimistic, I would say. So the mood is definitely, I'm getting a little bit excited. But yeah, the fact that you're able to kick off the tournament, it must be incredible, right?
Do you know what? Last time we played the hosts at the Euros, we got a 0-0 draw and we got slated for it. It was Scotland against England 4 years ago, or in Euro 2020. So I'm excited. I will be in a beer keller enjoying it with people in Lederhosen, having a good time. Unfortunately, I will be in London as opposed to being in Germany. But yeah, what a tournament opener. You've got one of the best hosts against one of the best sets of fans you're going to see at the tournament.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm actually jealous that Scotland get to be involved in the first game. But let's start off with the man in charge, as we always do. Of course, Steve Clarke continuing to do an incredible job with the Scotland team. What approach can we expect from him? What has he learned from previous tournaments? Are you expecting to see a bit of a evolution?
Yeah, 100%. So Steve Clarke's been in the job for a long time. So he's well over the 50 games mark, which is quite rare for kind of modern international managers, especially of a team like Scotland. First, it's worth saying we're massive. It's our second Euros in a row. We are in a cycle of success, which you see amongst small nations. And actually, Steve Clarke has been key to keeping us grounded, keeping us level, and just churning out the results when we need it at the right time. He's on about a 45% win ratio, which is pretty rare for a team like Scotland. I think what people need to do is when you step back from just focusing on the finals, which is what the big nations do, you have a seeding system where throughout qualification and throughout the final tournament, the big teams will have easy games and you see quite high win ratios because of that, but you're never sure how much you actually learn about your starting 11 on who's best. As an example, and sorry to go straight to the England comparison, which is something Scotland is slated for, but seeing Harry Kane score a penalty in a qualifier doesn't really teach you much about the depth of talent within England.
Oh, completely.
And I think what Scotland have managed to do and Steve Clarke's managed to do is rotate a team. Playing every fixture has been competitive, and I would expect him to go into this tournament having learnt the lessons from Euro 2020, where I didn't think Scotland did that badly, but it is stacked against us when you've got the big teams. I think we have a group now with Switzerland, Hungary and Germany where there are points to be taken. And I think from Steve Clarke, he realises it's not just about defending and getting away with a draw and being plucky. It is about putting goals in the back of the net. And what you see from the Scotland side is actually a little more free-flowing football, especially from our progressive midfielders with late runs from the likes of McTominay and John McGinn. And it gets us goals. I think we're going to surprise a lot of people. I think Steve Clarke will use Andy Robertson down the left in an aggressive way. And Ralston on the right, again in an aggressive way with good ball carrying. And I think Scotland are here to do absolute bits that people are going to be a bit... I think we're dark horses for use of a better word.
I love it. I love the optimism. Like when I'm looking at this squad, there is a lot more quality in that squad now than in the past. Like even players like Kieran Tierney, he's had his injury issues, but just has that experience, has that quality. That defense in general, I think, has a lot of quality as well. But let's move on to the squad, I suppose. Sure. And now, of course, Craig Gordon got his farewell in the friendlies, but he won't be playing in the tournament. Who is the man between the sticks that's going to take over what's a pretty big mantle?
Yeah, so I think Angus Gunn's probably going to get given the nod. He's been a great keeper. Obviously, his father played for Scotland, which was fantastic, and also Norwich, where he currently resides. He is a safe pair of hands, and he's quite late to the Scottish setup. So he did harbour ambitions of playing for England and played at youth level. He came to Scotland maybe 2 years ago, and he's looked solid. He's got a lot of clean sheets. He clearly gives that defence a good bit of positivity. And I think you'll see a competent keeper. I'm not expecting to see what we saw against Czech Republic in Euro 2020 of memes being made of our keepers jumping into a net and looking like a lemur.
Touch wood. That's famous last words right there.
True enough.
Okay, nice. And then going into the defense, now obviously you tend to go for a back three so that you can kind of shoehorn a little bit Kieran Tierney in because you have so much quality at left back. How do you see the defense being made up?
Yeah, so it's a really weird one. I'm not actually sure of our starting 11, if I'm honest. Obviously, Andy Robertson is world class,
Mm,
and that needs calling out as a thing. You wouldn't think in this day and age people need to hear how good Andy Robertson is. But if I think about another team in our group, Hungary, a lot of people tell us Hungary are fantastic at football, and the
mm,
first name on their lips is Szoboszlai, and
yeah.
he's great. Robertson is the equivalent
Mm,
to Scotland. He is world class, and he is a better influence at Liverpool, I would say, than Szoboszlai is. So I think getting Robertson in is important. He's the captain. He's a great leader. We've struggled a little bit at right back. We've had a lot of injuries to the likes of Aaron Hickey and Nathan Patterson, who I think would have started there. But I think you'll see Ralston come in. He's quite raw. He's only got 9 caps for Scotland, and he's a luxury player. He's a player who, like a lot of these Scottish starters, when he puts a Scotland shirt on, he goes up a level and he
mhm,
just seems really comfortable in the role. So I think you'll see quite aggressive wing backs. They're both good at carrying the ball, and certainly in Robertson, his assisting ability is up there with Trent Alexander-Arnold in terms
mhm,
of just switching it on, a little bit of pace. His movement and positioning is great, so that's good. We will have Kieran Tierney in the side. I think he's a fantastic defender, and when injury free, which seems to happen for Scotland, he looks solid and he really adds some talent there. There's one person who I'd call maybe our bolter, if that was the right phrase. I know it's something used in rugby for people coming
mhm.
through from the edges of the squad. Scott McKenna is a
Okay.
name that people won't be that familiar with, I don't think, on the whole. He's just been released by Forest and therefore doesn't have a club. But he spent the back end of last season at Copenhagen. You might have seen him playing Champions League football against Man City. So he came over to them in January. And he at centre back, I think, is a grade above what some of the other centre backs are, even if, again, he's come quite late to this squad. He was kind of on the periphery. But with 35 caps, I expect him to step up. Um, I'm not sure if we will play a back five or a back four. If it is a back five, I think you maybe put in either Ryan Porteous or Jack Hendry. It's one of
Mhm.
our slightly weaker positions. I don't really understand how Jack Hendry is playing out in Saudi. That seems odd, but good for him.
Yeah,
Uh,
congratulations.
but the thing about Scotland is they are, or they have been, hard to score against. Recently, we've tried to be a bit more expansive and conceded
Mhm.
goals. But there's nothing that concerns me about our defence, and I feel pretty strong about it. I think on the whole.
Very nice. Then moving into the midfield, maybe it's a little bit more settled, like the names we're a bit more familiar with. Obviously, McTominay cannot stop scoring for Scotland, so he'll definitely be in there. John McGinn and, of course, Gilmore, who's had an incredible season at Brighton, like just taking more and more steps in his progress. Do you see any other names that could find their way into that midfield, or is it a little bit decided?
Yeah, so we're really strong in midfield, and I think this is where I like the narrative to change around Scotland. I think, because I live in England, because most of your listeners will live in England, the portrayal of Scotland is the kind of yappy neighbour who kind of always fails and doesn't have the depth and largely isn't that
Mhm.
great at international football. But if you stand back from it and you look at some of the other smaller nations within the competition, where you say maybe the likes of Hungary or Romania
Mhm.
or Serbia have put together enough players in a squad where they could go far if they all gel
Yeah.
and there's some kind of unity there. I would say Scotland are perfect for that dialogue, and I don't know why it doesn't happen more.
Mm.
Um, in terms of our midfield, we do have depth actually. So the players that maybe won't get a game, I don't know if Ryan Christie makes it on coming from Bournemouth. I don't know if Callum McGregor gets a shout. He's been quite solid for Scotland. Even Stuart Armstrong, I think, is a great player as well. We could have Forrest coming in, depending on how kind of how deep he is. But those stalwarts that you talked about, McGinn, never has a man used his bottom in a better way to balance opponents out of the way. And in McTominay, he's a Scottish Haaland. He just can't
Mhm.
stop scoring.
Yeah.
And an interesting fact from qualification, actually, if you take away penalty goals, he's second on the
That's
scoring
incredible.
list, and he's not Scotland's penalty taker. The guy's a machine,
Mhm.
and I fully expect us to not only do well in midfield, but I expect in some of our games we will dominate the midfield.
I
Looking
like
forward to
it.
it.
I like it. And then heading up front. Now, this is where maybe I think there's a little bit of this is maybe the weakest area of the field. Now, Shea Adams obviously has had a fairly good season for Southampton. Obviously they got promoted. Shankland at Hearts seems to be getting a lot of headlines, but who do you think leads the line and how optimistic are you about that front line?
Yeah, so for me, I'll put Shea Adams in. I think he's the best all-round package. I think Shankland is good. I think he's maybe better as an impact player. For people who haven't heard too much about Lawrence Shankland, he was the Scottish Player of the Year. He's had a really good season, 31 goals in 47 appearances. He's a guy who can find the back of the net, but he does need the service. And when the service doesn't come, if we're in a low possession game or we're having to counter-attack, he does struggle. So I'd put Shay Adams in. He's back into the Premier League, which is great. Two players I think aren't on people's radars at all. There is a youngster in Tommy Conway who got his call up from the under-21s and probably should have scored against Finland the other day. If he can click quickly, it'd be nice to see him get some minutes. But I also like Lewis Morgan, who is currently playing for New York Red Bulls. He had maybe a slow start to his career at Celtic. It didn't quite take off for him, but he's gone to the States. People will question the quality of that league, but actually for Inter Miami and New York Red Bulls, he's putting the ball in the back of the net regularly, and he's very creative. He has a vision of what he wants to do. Whether he can execute it is another thing. But for me, I don't think that's where the bulk of the goals are coming from Scotland. I think our forwards are good at holding up the ball and keeping it there. I think it's all about those wing backs getting into attack, cutting it back, and you'll see finishes from John McGinn and McTominay. Maybe even Billy Gilmore if he wants to get his shooting boots on. But as a package, pretty happy with this squad, if I'm honest.
Nice. So which player are you tipping to have a breakout tournament this year?
Well, yeah, so the one thing I'm gutted about is that Lewis Ferguson didn't make it, and I just want to call him out. He's been ripping it up in Serie A, but unfortunately a big injury for him has kind of got in the way. If I'm honest, I think this is going to be Andy Robertson's tournament. We already know he's good. I think people are suddenly going to realise what he can actually offer on an international stage. And that's what Scotland have been lacking. We just haven't been in the tournaments. And I think when you don't make it to finals, people don't see what you've put together. But in the friendlies and the build-up into this tournament, Robertson has looked absolutely electric running down that left. And I fully expect the majority of our attacks to come from there.
Beautiful. Nice. Then moving on to the final question. How far will you go? Now, obviously, you must have heard it a million times. Scotland, are they going to get out the group stage? Can they finally get out of the group stage? What do you think would count as a successful tournament for Scotland?
Yeah, so again, I'm going to go back to the England comparison, and sorry to any Scottish fans out there to have to talk about them so much. That's just where we find ourselves. There is a weird English narrative on if a team do well against England, they're apparently good at football, and I just don't buy it. So I remember having to pretend that Macedonia could play football because they got a result against England qualifying. If you look at Hungary, they clearly are an up-and-coming team. I'm not going to knock them. I think it's great what they've put together. But they do not have the depth, and they don't have the tournament experience of going very far. Being able to get to a tournament and draw against the team wasn't good enough for Scotland against England, and I don't think Hungary's results in the last Euros will quite stack up to what people think it does. I would say Scotland can get points against Hungary. If I looked at Switzerland, I think they had an incredibly easy qualifying group and did incredibly badly.
Yeah, that's true.
And they clearly have superstars on paper. I'm not going to kind of deny that. But as far as international teams go, they're not on form in any way. And if I look at Germany, again, step back from the fact their squad is amazing, and it is. They're known for bottling it in recent tournaments. They are the perennial people who let themselves down, and everyone goes, wow, I didn't see that shot coming. So I do see that shot coming, and I think Scotland will get out of this group. How far we can go is another matter, but I draw people back to our qualification campaign, which, again, the issue with when big nations get to finals, they don't really follow what's going on in qualifying. They assume they're going through, and they don't look underneath the bonnet. Scotland had a really difficult qualifying group that had Norway in it, and people might say Norway are never there at the finals. But you try defending against Haaland and Ødegaard and Sorloth being top goal scorer in the league, or nearly top goal scorer in the Liga. They were a great side, and we beat them handsomely. The same with Spain. We didn't just show up against them; we beat them once, and we did really well at their ground. Unfortunately, a VAR goal went against us. It changed a little bit of the tie, but I think we can mix it with the top teams. I think we have a history of doing this, and there is something about being a smaller nation. You have to go through cycles of success. We've seen it with Wales. We've seen it with Republic of Ireland. It's very difficult to sustain those breakthrough moments where you make one or two tournaments, you have some key players, you've got to keep it going. Scotland, in terms of their cycle, we are very much on the up. We qualified for Euro 2020 through the Nations League qualifier, not through the normal qualification route. this time around, we're in on our own merit and we deserve to be there. We also got promoted for the second time in the Nations League. We're now a Group A team. And I've heard a lot of people say, oh, the Nations League doesn't matter, which is convenient when you get relegated. But Scotland are actually quite well in their cycle. And getting out of our group, it's not Leicester City winning the league.
No.
It's Villa getting fourth. It's difficult, but it's not outside of kind of our control. So I would expect Scotland to get a result against Germany or look very competent. I don't think a win. I'm not going to be bold enough to be like, we win all our games, but I don't think it's unheard of for Germany to have a bit of pressure and Scotland to turn up. And if we do get that draw or a win, I cannot wait to see the change in mood on us being just happy to be at a tournament, or the perception that that's the case. I see us going as far as we can. I think we do get out of the groups for sure.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, I can definitely sympathize with obviously I'm half Irish, so I sympathize with the cycle thing of like the Republic of Ireland definitely during going through a downturn. So I also, there's a part of me that looks at Scotland at the minute very, very enviously. We were there 10 years ago.
How far do you think we can go?
I think I can see you getting through the group. The only thing that worries me genuinely is that Switzerland, people always forget about Switzerland, and every tournament they genuinely do pretty well. I think they're just like a classic, decent tournament team. And they always seem to be around a 16 somehow. Like I always remember that they were the one team that beat Spain in 2008, right? Or 2010. They're always there or thereabouts. So I think Hungary, you had a good point when it's only when they beat England that people thought they were decent. I do think there's quality, but when we did the preview with Aaron about Hungary, it did seem like there was like a first 11 and then not much else. So I think, the only team that worries me for you really, I think, is Switzerland, because they're just so good at getting through tournaments usually. But I'm fully supporting Scotland, and I'm sure the feelings are returned and you'll be supporting England fully, because that's what England expects, right?
Do you know what? I am. I would say, on a side note, I know this is a Scotland preview. As an Arsenal fan at club level, I'm ecstatic that 0 Spurs players have been picked by England. They're becoming more easy on the eye as the days go by. So yes, good luck to all of them.
Yeah, I did enjoy that Maddison drop. But anyway, we're not going to turn this into an Arsenal podcast. We're not going to get sidelined. We can save that for future. But Charles, thanks as always for joining us. That was fantastic. When our viewers and listeners want to find you, where can they find you online?
If you look at my username down there, Mondesportif is where we're about. We will be producing endless amounts of content, and we will no doubt have you and the team on, Rory. So good luck to you and all your listeners, whoever they may be supporting. And bear in mind, there is always a Scotland fan worth hugging, whether we win or lose. So enjoy us at the tournament. We're very happy to be here.
Beautiful. Thanks for coming on, man. Guys, as always, hit the like and subscribe button down here. If you're listening on a podcast, give us a follow and a rating on your podcast app of choice. You can find us on Twitter at Italian Anglopod, on TikTok and Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod, and keep an eye out on our socials for all our Euro stuff. We still haven't quite decided what our program is. We're trying to work it in around work, but we will be there. So yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. Ciao, alla prossima.